Welcome back to another SuperCoach video with me, JD. Today, rather than taking you through a team update, I'm going to share with you the 7 players that are yet to leave my side during the preseason. As you can imagine, playing SuperCoach like we do, we fiddle around a lot with our preseason sides, trying different combinations, different structures, seeing what works and what doesn't work. But inevitably, there are some players that make every single side that I make, and those are the 7 that I'm sharing you today. I'm of course excluding rookies. They're just placeholders, a little bit pointless to say if any of those are locks at the moment, even though we may have some ideas around a few that could be. But instead, I'm going through 6 premiums and 1 mid-pricer that haven't left my side yet this preseason, no matter what I've done with my team, my structure, whatever it may be. So starting off in defense, there is exactly 1 here, and that one is Lachie Whitfield. Someone I'm a huge fan of and have been for a long time. Obviously, he had that lacerated liver at the start of last year, which interrupted his preseason. He also had a subbed off game for 32 due to concussion, so averaging just the 92.3, but the 2 seasons before averaging 104.5 and 111.2. He's very important to GWS's structure and game plan, and we saw that at the back end of last year, even though he wasn't necessarily playing his best. Some people worried about him due to his history of missed games, and while that is true to an extent, obviously the concussion is something that you can't really predict. The lacerated liver is a freak one-off, and then I think the last injury he had before that was in 2019, where he had the collarbone break, which forced him to miss 6 games. I want to say it was 6. And up until that point, he was averaging 116. So, 2020 played the full year. These really aren't soft tissue injuries that you would expect to repeat. His age profile is good. It's 27. He's coming into theoretically, his prime. And, given that heavily discounted price, he doesn't have the history of soft tissue injuries. He's shown that he has this high ceiling, and he's so far on track for a full preseason. A phrase that you're going to hear a lot throughout the rest of this video. If they haven't had a full preseason, they won't be on this list. But yeah, all those factors combined make me feel that Lachie Whitfield is a must-have for my team at the moment. At 500k, he's the cheapest of those that I see potentially averaging 105 plus. Next up, we've got a few in the midfield. So surprisingly, not Jack Macrae. I've had one team where I mucked around with not having the top price midfielder in Macrae. So, he's been in well over 90% of my sides. But yeah, unfortunately not 100%. So he just misses out. I don't mind normally betting against the top price player in each line, or at least a couple of them each year. But I don't think this is the year to do against Jack Macrae. But someone yet to leave my side is Jack Steele. So we saw him break out over the last 2 years, going from 95 to 114, and then from 114 up to 126 last year, shedding those tagging responsibilities and really focusing on running and leading St Kilda's engine room. He is a vice captain or captain option every week, and I think paired with Macrae, they're probably the best 1-2 comp in the competition, 1-2 punch in the competition when it comes to SuperCoach. At least to start the year. What's interesting to note is he does have some potential upside at this 126 price. He could still develop further and break out again. I think that's probably unlikely. We're probably nearing his potential. But we did see him average 130 with Marshall last year and 120 without, which means that there is some potential upside as long as Marshall stays healthy this year. In addition to that, the umpires are meant to be rewarding tacklers more, enforcing some of the rules that were introduced a little bit heavier. And given that Steele is one of the highest tackling midfielders in the competition, he is someone that could potentially benefit from this and get a few additional points off the back of that. I think, the tackling combined with his contested possessions does make him one of the more consistent and safer midfield options, which is why he's yet to leave my side. Plus, he's easy on the eyes, and that always helps. Next up is another value option in Lachie Neale. So we all know he had a pretty disappointing last year, and a lot of people got burnt by starting him at a well over 700k price. In the 2 years prior to last year, he averaged 121 and 134 before the injury affected 2021 year, which now sees him priced at just under 100. Very cheap price for someone that has gone 120, 134 before. So the type of injuries he's had are a little bit of a concern, unlike someone like Lockie Field, because he did have calf complaints, and I think he had issues with his back similar to what we've seen Cripps struggle with. And so those things do worry me, and he is turning 29 this year. That is typically when you start to see the decline in a midfielder. Like generally, obviously each individual player is different, but on average, like 29 is kind of when they peak, and then you start to see them drift away from there. So he is someone that is getting a full preseason so far, and the reports are that he is back to his best. He looks amazing in the midfield. And yeah, he's still like around that premium peak age. So I don't have him getting back to his Brownlow best, but I do have him kind of in that 115, 125 range. And given that he's priced at 100, this is incredibly good value for someone that should be either a top 8 or around the top 8 midfielders. My next two are both in the Rucks. So it is Gawn. No, not Gawn. Definitely not. Darcy and Grundy. Gawn on the mind, obviously. So rather than this being like a glowing endorsement of Darcy and Grundy, I reckon it speaks more to the overall ruck situation more broadly. I think the only other serious option that you can consider is Max Gawn. And a lot of people have selected him over a third of the competition. Gawn and Grundy have been that set and forget combo for a while now, so I understand why people are doing it. For me personally, I just think that Luke Jackson continues to eat into Max Gawn's scores. I've gone over this a couple of times, so I'm not going to go into it in a ton more detail here, but that does worry me. Worry me that he might not present value at 121, and he may not even be one of the top 2 rucks this year. In terms of then like swapping to Darcy and Grundy and the upside on them, so Darcy showed his ceiling last year. If you watched him at all the back end of last year, you know how crazy some of his games were. And he finished with a 118 average despite having 6 games where he had some type of knock or injury concern, either leading to him having significantly reduced periods of time or being subbed off. So this is like he's got really large upside, and that is someone that can burn you if you don't start. And even though he had all those knocks and all those little complaints, he still managed to play 21 games and be the second overall. Not on average points. I think Nick Nat was still ahead of him, but so second highest average. Being a Fremantle player and having to worry about the bubble is obviously a little bit of concern. And then during preseason training, we have seen him appear with some strapping on his knee the last week or so, which is also a concern. You never want to see your players having strapping if they've had problems with that area in the past. I guess the good news is despite that strapping, he still has been playing the match sims for Fremantle. So he is someone like, of all the ones we're looking at, I could see myself potentially moving out of one of Darcy or Grundy if we got some really bad preseason news. Like I think Gawn is still a viable other option. Or if we do get enough positive signs from, I don't know, a mid-pricer ruck, like maybe I could play around with that strategy. But for now, Darcy and Grundy, set and forget. That's my priority. So Grundy, I guess, like, where do I see the upside on him? He's obviously been very durable outside of that unlucky neck nerve problem that he had last year, which to me just seems like a fluke incident with no real like high chance of reoccurrence. But we have seen Grundy drop his time on ground the last couple of years. So 2 years ago, it was something like high 80s, and last year it was around 80%. I tweeted these numbers out, by the way, on Twitter. If you're not following me at Jackson Davey, please do. I kind of am trying to tweet like one interesting stat I find a day at the moment just to help with SuperCoach or to make you think. But yeah, the news for Grundy this preseason was all about him dropping a little bit of weight, getting fitter again. And so I'm hoping that leads to more time on ground, which should then improve his scoring a little bit as well. Maybe he doesn't get back to his absolute best, but we could see him go from 115 to a 120 or something like that. In the forward line, we've got obviously 2 more to round out the 7. So first is Josh Dunkley. This is probably not a surprise. I am actually like somewhat surprised it's only 50% owned. He does seem like one of the obvious must-have for me in the forward line. To break it down, between round 1 and 6 last year, he averaged 129, which is insane. I mean, if you look at the highest averaging forwards this year for us to pick from, none of these are above 100. I know a couple of them got moved into the midfield, like Zorko, for example. But I think Zorko was still only a 109 average, was he? Let's check. Yeah, 109 average, and Dunkley start of the year was 20 points higher than that. That is crazy. So if he goes on that type of run, even if he does get injured, you are so far ahead at that point, both in cash generation that and points, that it kind of doesn't matter, especially with the extra trades this year. Obviously, you're trying to avoid injury trades, and I think the positive on Dunkley is it isn't a soft tissue problem; it's a shoulder dislocation. Having previous shoulder dislocations does predispose you to more shoulder dislocations in the future, which is what's happened with Dunkley, right? This is his second one. But generally, they have pretty good recovery from surgery. He hasn't had strapping in the preseason. He's had an uninterrupted preseason from what we've seen so far. And he's coming at a 102.5 average for someone that could go well north of 120 in the right conditions. Now, I don't fully expect that to happen this year. I think the Dogs will continue to tweak with what is the right midfield mix and, who is their best three-person combo. We saw that change a fair bit last year. They tried different things, even taking McRae out of the midfield for parts of the final, which George goes on about way too much, but it is important to know. And we've seen Dunkley in the past. They've played him at ruck, they've played him in the forward line. So they do see as someone that is versatile enough to play some of those other positions. But I think with Dunkley, they have also seen that his best position is on the inside. And even if they do want to move him around a little bit, I think you're going to get enough midfield time out of him that he's easily going to be a top 6 scoring forward. And I think that's one of the things that we can't say about a lot of the other premiums. Their durability concerns are as bad or worse, or their role concerns are worse. There is no one that I think has a better combination of durability and confirmed role than Dunkley does. And that's why he's someone that hasn't moved from my side all year. I mean, I also like watching him a lot. I like rooting for him, and it always helps when you pick players that you like watching, like Whitfield, Steele, Dunkley. These are all players I really enjoy watching. So those tend to be the ones I struggle to move on, maybe from a little bit more emotionally. But Dunkley's given me no reason to move off him yet. And then the final one is a super obvious one. It's actually probably easier if I just sort by ownership percentage, because I will find him much simpler, which is Cogs. So 62% owned, you probably have him. I probably don't need to wax lyrical about why he's such a good pick, but just in case you're one of those that don't have him, I'll go over it quickly. So before 2021, he had 6 years of averaging over 90 with, I believe, 3 of those over 100. So phenomenal scoring in the past. He's had a full preseason and has been training with the midfield group, I believe 80% of the time, as the reports I've seen lately. We also saw last year that there were better suited players in that team to go forward, such as Taranto, and obviously like Green is normally there as well. So it just feels to me like we have seen him score poorly in the forward line in the past. I just don't think they're going to make the same mistake of parking him up there that much. They're going to give him more midfield time or find a different spot on the ground for him. And like realistically, at 260k, we're not expecting him to be a keeper. There is a chance that he becomes like a F6 or a last forward upgrade, which is great. But at his price, he's going to make us 150k. He's guaranteed best 22. He's the co-captain still. So that job security and that cash generation is something that I can't point to in any other forward rookie at the moment, or really any other forward priced cheaper than him. And that is what makes him such a must-have at the moment. Maybe there is a world where over the preseason games, he doesn't look that great, with Daniels now injured as well as Green out for the first 5 weeks. Maybe they park him 4 to 5 weeks and this option doesn't look as attractive and we get a few forward rookies. But from everything we've seen so far, that is incredibly unlikely, and that is why he has been a must-have in my team all year and many of your teams as well. But yeah, these are the 7 players I'm yet to move from my preseason sides. What are your players that you've yet to move on? I'd be really interested to hear what are the players that you've effectively locked in at this point. These are all players that look like locks to me if they're yet to leave one of my sides. That's not to say that they won't move. From the lockout counter, you can see we've got another 33 days to go. So lots of time to change, especially as injuries occur, preseason stuff kind of evolves. We get the match practices and all that type of stuff. But yeah, let me know who is currently yet to leave your team, and I will see you guys in the next one.